Hey everybody, John from Hot Rods in the Woods. Just a little update on what's been happening. I actually did a big cleanup here. Started organizing, getting spiffy stuff together. Started making things happen. Toolboxes everywhere. And a Model A in pieces. So I figured I'd bring you up to date as to what we're going to start with. I got a couple things that I've had in boxes that I haven't pulled out yet. Number one is this Yes MiG 205DS. It's a little 200 MiG machine. You can also do TIG, but I don't know that I'd mess with it. But next to my little Hobart 120. But the neat thing about this machine is, number one, it's inverter. Number two, it'll weld a little bit bigger stuff. So I'll be plugging that all together here shortly and making that work. The other thing I got was this little S7. It's a Cut 50 plasma cutter. And we'll be playing with that a little bit too, but we'll get to that a little later. One of the things they do say about this plasma cutter is to go ahead and extend the ground wire. So I had an old one off of my big Miller. It's about 8 or 10 feet long compared to the old one, so I'll go ahead and do it. The one that comes with it is copper plated aluminum for one, and it's, I don't know, 5 feet long. So you have to have the machine just about right on top of whatever you're working with. So I went ahead and threw that on there. So here's what's going to happen. And I'll get to grinding and videoing here in a couple minutes, but I've removed the engine. I left the transmission cross member in. I've got to get in here and start dealing with all of this mess. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, get rid of this steering column because it's junk. Maybe I'll keep it for something, but I don't know what. Jeez. It looks to be a 80s column, judging from where the turn signal switch lumps out and all of that. So we'll figure out what to do with it. Hanging on the wall is old art. So the first thing I need to do is I need to rearrange this whole back end. Now, I don't know how well you can see it, but the pinion angle is aiming up. Let me grab my gauge here. I happen to have left it on the front. So they got the pinion angle up and they've got negative caster in the front. So this thing wouldn't have driven at all. Now this is just my Mickey Mouse one. We'll throw it on there. And you can see she's aiming up a pretty good bit. So that's got to go down. Now, the reason it's got to go down is the transmission isn't 5 inches above it. So we're going to get that a little closer to level. Actually, for cruising, you want it about 1 degree negative, 1 or 2. This isn't a big accelerating machine. You can actually set it just about straight because the suspension on this locks it pretty much at the angle. But I'm going to set it up a little flatter. I'd like to get the engine down in the chassis just a little bit from where it was. You can go back to some of the old video and you'll see they had it up. It wasn't real high, but it kind of makes a mess out of everything in the front. So I'm going to change that around. But back to where I was. I have to cut out all of the brackets back here where they're welded in, and you can see why. So I'm going to grind those all out. I'm going to make sure that they are side to side straight, and then I'm going to re-weld those plates in. This piece was purchased, and it was purchased just the way it's put together. However, these welds all need to be readdressed and dealt with. This cross member I'm going to be cutting out today probably. Same with this side. My first plan of attack is to get rid of all this garbage. I mean, look at those welds. This guy's going to trust his life to things like that. So that's some of it. I've also got to cut the mounts out for the motor. which I don't know if you can see it. It looks like somebody threw gum at it. It's only welded in the top and in the front, not in the back. This one is just gobbledygook together bad. So all of that's got to be fixed. So that's my first line of attack. And once I get that done and I get the rear end fairly square to the chassis, then I have to do the same thing with the front. And you can see that that's just not good. Now that's a piece of box tubing that he just cut the bottom out of, and it's held in with a 3/8 bolt. This side, pretty much the same way. You can't see it behind the master cylinder. It's got a 5/16 bolt in it. So there's a lot of little things that have to be addressed, and that's my first line of attack. So that's what I'll be doing today and the next couple days. I do have shocks for the front. I've got to make the mounts. We'll be videoing that. I've got the coilover system that's going to go in the back. I'll be videoing that. I have to figure out how to do some sort of a ride height on this thing because it's laying on the frame. The differential is on the frame. There's no weight in this whole entire truck, and there's absolutely no suspension. So I'll have to jack it up a ways. It's going to change the look of the truck, but there's nothing I can do. It just is what it is. It's got to go up a ways. So I'll be doing that, figuring that stuff out, and we'll go from there. So stand by. I'm going to get set up a little bit, grab the grinder. We'll do a little bit of a time lapse just so you can watch a little actual work happening, and then we'll get back with you. Okay, so first thing we got to do is get this master cylinder and all these Mickey Mouse brake lines out of the way. Just watch my head. So, I don't know how well you can see it. Can you see that? It's hanging. Just hanging all the way to the back to a flexible line. So we're going to try and get rid of all of that. So the first thing we got to do is get these brake lines loose. It's got a little T up here in the front. Up there, we get rid of that. And we'll start removing more garbage. Now, if you haven't already invested in a set, get yourself a set of line wrenches. They save a lot of problems because they grip it more than just on one flat side, and they keep the fitting from rounding out. So I do have my drain pan underneath it so that we can catch all that goop before it destroys my floor. Look at that, they actually came loose. Now once you get them loose, then it's a pain in the butt with a line wrench. But if you get lucky, you can undo them with your fingers. So I'm going to an under dash unit for this truck. The reason being, I am just not a fan of this old technology with stuff underneath the floor. Now, as I said in a previous video, we're eliminating the fuel tank that was right in front of the dashboard. And in doing so, we can keep it from turning into a ball of rust here by putting master cylinder up underneath the dash. So we're actually hanging a brand new Wilwood brake pedal assembly. No, I'm sorry, it might be Speedway Motors, but one of the two underneath the dash. So pretty easy to do. I know I'm using a line wrench on a master. Oh, of course the other side's spinning. All right, so we'll let that drain for a minute, and I'll go grab another wrench so we can get the master cylinder itself off. I'll show you some of the more garbage that goes with it. As I'm walking away, I'll continue to talk to you and tell you that in doing all of this, it's really not that expensive. One of the things that people just don't realize is by the time you're rebuilding all of this garbage underneath, and you go and buy a new master cylinder, buy all new lines, get all of this done, free up. I mean, I've got to re-weld all this garbage. This bracket's got to come off. Everything would have to be removed, put back on, probably have to replace the bracket along with the master. The under dash pedal assembly was $100. I'm sorry, maybe 100. I don't know what it was. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll post it when I find out. But it comes with the master cylinder, with the brake pedal. Everything is there. You just make it work. Now, in a minute, I'll show you how I'm going to do that, because it isn't exactly easy, but it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out how to do it either. Now I want to splash some brake fluid everywhere. Let's do it from the other side. Scooby-Dooby-Doo. So, if I didn't already tell you guys, I have a bucket of bolts from underneath this car. And the thing I find the most humorous, if there's humor in junk, is that the entire car underneath, I've only found thus far 2 bolts that are the same. Now, I could be wrong. These 2 might be the same too. And they were the 2 bolts bolting the bottom of the transmission to the Mickey Mouse mount. Now, it's pretty saddening to think that that is the truth, but it is. This is going to try and fall off in my hand. But it didn't. So, in all of this guy's engineering skill, he also took the boot off the front of the master cylinder. Now, that's the only thing that keeps that piston from rusting into the bore. The pistons are aluminum, but the bore is steel. So if it locks itself in the bore, you don't have any brakes. The first time we pushed the pedal, it was stiff. Then we find out that this bar right here, where the pedal slid on, it was bound super tight. When I got the body off, I grabbed it just to try and move it out of the way. No, as I'm taking the body off, and it would barely move. So anyway, that's something that had to be addressed as well. So now, all of this bracketry's got to come off. And you can see the fine, I don't know what that's supposed to be. It's just, there's a hole here, and this here. There's no hole on the other side. There is a bracket. What the, oh wow, they boogered that up bad. I see what they did. There's a bracket above it for the inner, for the running board that is not attached. So what I've got to do, I'm going to cut all this off. I'm going to probably cut out here and here and put a new box piece in, or maybe I'll go all the way back to here. It's just so cobbed up. There's so much has got to be done as far as making this garbage seem to make sense. It's because so much of it doesn't. It's just ungodly. Oh, well, there went the bottom half of that motor mount. That somebody would actually think that this thing was safe to drive. I'm gonna get your head up in the brake line. I'm gonna undo the camera here as soon as I find a rag, and I'm gonna show you a couple things from underneath that are very disturbing. Using one of my wife's microfibers, I'm sure she'll just absolutely love that. So, let's pop this off, because you really need to see this. That is a weld for the motor mount. And those are cuts from a torch, which I have no idea why. I mean, none of this makes sense. And what is this plate that's here? It's got a tack weld here. It's got a little tack weld here. There's no welds on the bottom. I can probably pop that right off. But Now this side motor mount, that's the weld. I don't even know how you could get weld to stick to anything when it looks like that. I don't believe it's touching anything. I should really grab a hammer and just try smacking that one. Let's do that just because we can, because that's just some Mickey Mouse. It's, well, Michelle Mousset, I'm sorry. Copyright infringement or some garbage. Let's see what happens now, boys and girls. I'm going to put you there. Can you see, where is it? Right there. All right, we'll go grab a hammer. I'll be interested to see if it moves. I have a feeling. Now, which one should I hit first? Let's try this first. Dang it. Ah, there goes part of the mount. That was holding the motor in. Sorry, the engine. Just imagine a guy goes and grabs this thing. Oh, look. Oh, this even gets better. I gotta take you off the stand for a sec. See the daylight? Half of that weld didn't even touch. Oh, Jesus. Oh, let's... Can you see how much of that was actually welded? That's the motor mount, guys. That's the down torque side. Oh, and the front welds. Well, the good news is this will be an easy one to grind off. But look at that. Just that little tab right there was holding that whole mount up. Okay, so there's the first one. Oh, I'm excited now. This cuts down on my cutting and grinding a bunch. Let's see what, and I couldn't even really get a good swing on it. Let's see what happens on this side. I'm not going to try this mount because, oh my goodness. Did you see that? Oh my goodness. Huh. So, this was done to hide all of that. What the heck? So what's this one do? I think this one will come off too. Let's see. This is why you always take a buddy with you. That one's going to come off too. I'm going to go get a bar. Always take a buddy with you when you go to buy a car or a truck, especially if it's been modified. If nothing else, he can help you or she can help you eliminate that excitement of, oh my God, it's so cool. Because if that had not happened with me going with the friend of mine that owns this, I actually found the truck. And we actually went together because it's a ways away. But if he had just looked at it on a cursory look and they said, yeah, it needs a tune-up. That's what the guy actually told us. Needs a tune-up, but bye-bye. He was just driving it not too long ago and then he passed away. Well, the reality is, if this was on the road, you don't want to be anywhere near it. Let's see. All right, I got to get something thinner, but it's moving. So we'll grab something else. So anyway, you can maybe convince your buddy that maybe it's not the best purchase. Now, because of what I found, the people who really didn't know what they had. Look at that. Well, there's another one doing pretty much nothing. I just can't understand. And it's got a bunch of holes under it too. All right, so we'll get the channel accent. Well, weeble wobble that one off. I'm almost wondering if this will come off. We're going to try that in a minute. Unbelievable. Anywho, where was I? We did get a decent deal. And even with the deal that we got, all of a sudden you get under here and you start looking even closer. And you start to realize that the great deal that you got still wasn't as good as it probably should have been. If this weren't a friend, this would be insane money to do what I'm doing. Now, I know we could buy another frame, and believe me, if it hasn't, look at that. I don't know if you can see it, but it's moving back here and bending the frame a little, where they didn't box the frame all the way through. There you go. There's another piece off. All right. We're on a roll now. Let's back you up. Let's see what happens with this one. I got something a little more meaty here. Guess what? This one's moving too. Oh, geez, there's one of all the welds. Now this is, oh, the Torx. That is unbelievable. So I just removed all the motor mounts. I want you to look at this and look at the penetration right here. There's none. There's enough to tack it in place. That is it. This is scary. You'll be able to see it really well here. All of that weld, the guy ground it, but none of that weld penetrated that 1/4 inch angle. None of it. You saw how easy it was. Look, there's a couple little silver spots here that were holding it. A couple really tiny ones right here that were holding it. And that's it. That's that whole motor mount. I mean, you can just imagine how much that's holding. How much that's holding. This is scary beyond belief. Well, the good news is that sure does make it simple for disassembly. So, I guess it has been determined that the only way to fix this right is I'm going to have to, oh, there's a crack right there. Hopefully it doesn't go right into the bolt hole, but it may. I'm gonna have to remove this next. This has got some welds to it. I'm gonna have to go ahead and grind this off because I've got to keep something fairly, whatever, I don't know. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead, trim all this weld off. I'll grind that. You don't need to watch me do grinding. Grinding's a pain in the ass and it's messy. So I'm gonna grind that all out. Then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go back here. Let me get back here with the camera. I'm making everything filthy with my hands, but that's all right. But I'll go ahead and start getting this other stuff. My thought is to go ahead and I'll pick the motor up. I'll put the new motor mounts on it. I'll set it in the hole using the transmission mount as the front to rear measurement. Now, I don't necessarily need to do that, except for the fact that I want the drive shaft that's already been cut and balanced to work. Everything fit, seemed to be fine. I know I don't have a lot of room in front anyway, so I could probably move it. Well, I can't move it. So what I need to do is hang the electric fan on the radiator first and then set the motor right behind it, and that should work fine. I do have a slight amount of adjustment to go forward and back with the rear end. I can get that squared. Yeah, this cross member here, I know it's dirty, but this was welded by a welder. So I can leave those in place. That'll get my squareness set up for back here. Sorry about the light. You gotta go up like this. So we can make that happen. So I've just cleaned the front 3 feet of the frame. Now it's on to the rest. Now my question is, well, it's not a question. See, realistically, this needs to be down farther. It needs to be down farther because see where they put the dent right here? That's where the drive shaft came through. So in order to get my pinion angle correct, I have some adjustment here, which is probably how I'm going to have to do it. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to have to cut all of those welds out. So I could just rotate the rear end right where it sits, I guess. But that's still, the motor and transmission still need to come down another inch. So we'll get a little further involved in this. Maybe I'll just go ahead and cut this cross member out because you know what it's going to be. Now, there's another thing too. This cross member is designed to unbolt. So instead of doing it right, you put the plates on the outside, and I'm sure they're welded just like the rest. Instead of putting them on the inside, which if I put it on the inside, I box that up, put it on the inside with bolts, then you could actually unbolt the transmission cross member and get the transmission out from under the car, whereas you couldn't previously. So I guess I'll go ahead and do that. I'll cut that out. I'll cut these braces out above it, these up here, if you can see where I'm at. I'll get that one. I'll get this one. And then we'll go from there. I know darn well that this rear end, this whole mess here, has to be adjusted, but I think I'm going to stick with where I'm at now. Go ahead and get this front part of the frame fixed, get the wiring out of the way, get these brake lines out of the way, and we'll move on and go forward. So sit tight, I'll be back. Please like and subscribe. I've actually started getting a few more subscribers and I really like that. I hope that maybe getting back into my actual working videos will kind of get you a little more excited. Now keep in mind, this is just one of many. This just happens to be the one that's in here now. I do have a 66 Catalina coming in with a 421, I believe. You won't believe this car. It's outstanding. The guy has spent buku bucks on the interior is gorgeous. The paint is gorgeous. He's had all the chrome work done. He just needs me to do some wiring and a little tweaking and a tuning to make her live right. So we'll do that. I also have a 67 Dart convertible coming in, and that Dart convertible is from a friend of mine down in Florida who literally within just a couple weeks of the Hot Rod Power Tour 2 years ago was leaving work. A tractor, a farm tractor popped out in front of him and he ran into the back of it. He wasn't going 10. He was going pretty good. Destroyed the car, but worse, it destroyed him. Surgeries and in a coma, I believe, for a couple days, and he's back out. So this year Power Tour 2024, which he didn't make last year's, obviously, 2023, he tried, he drove up, he made it one day, but was in so much pain and uncomfortable that he went back home. So his Dart is coming in to me. We are actually yanking the motor out and putting a big block Mopar in it. And you'll see that whole thing come together, and then we'll do the Power Tour with it. I'll be running my old Chrysler, he'll be running that. Along with those, I also have a whole new engineering plan for this old girl. We'll be revamping some, making the tilt front end much simpler. I may even make it close to automatic. I haven't decided yet. It'd be really cool to touch a button and have that thing slide out and tilt down. So we'll see how that works out and go from there. Anyway, in the meantime, once again, please like and subscribe. And as I back away from here and give you a final view. Oh, by the way, look at all the room. This is hard to imagine, but I cleaned up like crazy for 2 days. Now I've got a shop that actually makes sense. So things are looking up for Hot Rods in the Woods. Once the weather breaks, our motorhome will be coming in here. We'll be motorhoming it inside here while we build an apartment out, but that's okay. Got to make some money at the same time, so this is what we do. Take care, be safe, have a great day. Well, I had to play a little bit more, so I took my microphones off, but we're gonna give this a shot. After those motor mounts came out so easy, I have a feeling that this cross member is gonna come out the same way. So I'm gonna back you over to the other side, and I'm just gonna hit it with a hammer a couple times. And let's see what happens. It moved. I'm gonna go to the other side. Back you up a little bit. I'm pretty good with a hammer, but I don't want to ruin the camera. Get out of here. Whoa, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, that's why I'm not a baseball player. It actually is moving. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a wedge up in there. What this does, not only does it get your frustrations out, but where did the other wedge go? I don't see it. But it also makes me not have to remove the fenders. Well, that was fun. I looked for that thing all over the place, and then it turned out to be right above me on top of the passenger side running board. Anywho, here we go. We're gonna try smacking her a couple more times with a hammer. I have this fine old wedgie thing. Don't know what it was for. It used to be on the end of a pole or something. She's a tough old thing. It's old. And there's a spot for it right there. Sorry for being in the way here. Well, you saw that. All right, now, is the other side just gonna come apart? Let's see. Once again, I'm not doing anything real fancy here. This is their welds. Hey, that one's actually pretty good. Let's see how good, shall we? Can you see that? Once again, terrible. And this one too. So, there's the whole front half of the car disassembled, and the only thing I took a grinder to was a couple of the rivets up here on top, and I can't get this out because there's rivets on the bottom that I have to grind out. I'm gonna make my best attempt to cut those rivets out and get that out of there. There are rivets in the back. I don't know if you can see them. This means there's rivets in the front. I can get to one. I may have to cut this out a little bit to get in there to get to the other ones. But that's okay. I mean, geez, I gotta box it a little bit anyway. So this side, same way. It's like the bottom one. I don't know if you can see it. That's the bracket for the running board. And the rivet is right at the bottom of it. But I don't know if it's a rivet or what it is. But once again, it's all gotta go. So hope you got a kick out of this. You know, once again, when you're buying stuff like that, buyer beware. The people that sold this to me, the guy that had put it partially together, passed away. And they had no idea what they had. But an unsuspecting buyer with a nice pretty set of chrome valve covers, and the outside of it, you saw the pictures, looks pretty cute. It's a good looking little truck. Could have easily spent a bunch of money on it. A, could have driven it down the road and killed himself, because if you recall, let me grab the piece. I don't know that I ever really showed you this. This is the steering linkage with the Heim joint, or a U-joint, that was attached to this. I don't know how well you can see this. This is about the length of my knuckle. And this was slid in here like that. Keeping in mind that the rack and pinion is attached to the front axle. So if the axle went down, it went farther away from the column. And it literally did this when we were taking it off the trailer. The steering came unhooked. Now, that's scary in its own, when the steering wheel just all of a sudden starts to spin. So this truly was a death trap. It absolutely was a death trap. This looks like a piece of pipe that well, no, I guess it's an original D, but it looks like it was cut off. I don't know how well you can see that. I'm in the wrong light here. Let's try it this way. There we go. You can see it was cut off of the bottom of the steering column, and then this piece was jammed in the end of it. And once again, the rack, and that's another thing we've got to deal with, is bolted to the axle. And worse than that, the steering arm, again, I'm in the wrong light, this steering arm lays right against the spring when the motor's in it. So this is all just bogus as can be. So we're going to be changing all of that. I'll be readjusting everything. Obviously, everything's got to be changed. It's a simple setup. I gave you a quick education in how this has got to happen. Then maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. Being as we're equally working in a pretty much equal plane, I don't know if you can see that. There is zero caster. It actually looks like it leans a little forward to me, but that could be an optical illusion. It should be leaning back about 8 degrees. Now I'll give you an idea how much that is. That's 8 degrees. So it's a pretty good bit when you start moving things around that much. Now, the good thing about that is I'm removing these brackets. Aren't they beautiful? More wonderful welding. I'm afraid to take those off for fear the front end will fall out, and it probably would. But they need to come down. By pulling these down, probably 2 inches, I will add more positive caster to it, which makes it go down the road more like your bicycle did when you were a kid, so that you could let go of the wheel and ride no hands, and it would go down the road. If the forks were aiming backwards, it would try and fall over itself and you'd never be able to do it. So that's the whole idea here. By doing that, you can automatically see that the rack will come down as well and clear this, so it will be in a better position. And that also gives me better aim at the steering column, which will have 2 U-joints. It will have the one up here, and then it'll have one at the bottom of the steering column back toward the back. So hopefully that'll bring all that together. Now, at the same time, once again, I don't have a problem adding the rack to the straight axle, because the straight axle is a good tough part. It doesn't affect it at all. I mean, I'm sure you've seen them where the guys poke them full of holes. You can put holes all along here to make it look kind of cooler, and it cuts a bunch of weight out. I'm not going to do that. By the way, this little bracket here, I don't think it's doing anything. I don't even know if it, I don't know. He might have put that in to try and move the rack to get it to shim or something. But stuff like this we got to get taken care of. So it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. So that's what we'll do there. Obviously, I've got to do a little something here. Probably going to end up painting from here to here. Sorry. The front underneath of this pan black. And I may even make a piece of tin that comes over the front of this just to dress this. Nobody really needs to see this stuff. I mean, who cares? So that's where we're at. It's still even got the cover up here where the crank went to turn this thing over. So next step, pull the radiator, start figuring out. See, this is the kind of garbage I'm talking about. Can you see that? And the other side, I mean, it's silliness. It's just silliness. So we'll go to goofing around and continue on and have a fun time at it. So hope you learned a little something. Hope you like my rants. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. See you for now. We'll be back in the next day or two. Bye.